This general is quote unquote some kind of a loose cannon, but I think there's a purpose for that. You know, they do that for Saiwar, but there's always a disclaimer. There's always that deniability that this is just a study, this is some kind of a study group, and they're not speaking for the government. That's how they operate. Just like, you know, when you have the combination of China Daily, they'll say something, but the government will say, oh, that's China Daily, that's not us.
I want to ask former Secretary Allen, do you think there's a danger that our own diplomats are misreading China's intentions in our area, that in a way we're tiptoeing around them and not addressing the issue head on? I mean, well, the thought that comes to mind is when the Europeans were trying to appease Berlin and Hitler marched all over them.
You know, I can't speak for the government, okay? It's very difficult to put myself in these shoes and divine what's in their minds, because they have their own game plan, all right? I don't think they're also working linearly, all right? So this much I'll say. I think the government has taken a very good, path towards dispute resolution, which is to elevate this to ITLOS, all right? We're taking the moral high ground here, okay? And we're in effect countering China's approach, which is to threaten war, to threaten counter-strike every time we protest about their intrusions, about their occupation and coercion. And that gives a distinct difference between the Philippine approach and the Chinese approach. And the international community has taken note of this. And the Philippine approach hews very closely to what the Constitution calls for. The Constitution does not allow war as an instrument to promote national interest. And therefore, taking the lawful, reasonable approach towards dispute resolution is the way to go. Now, going to that general who spoke, another general talked about the cabbage strategy that they're applying in the West Philippine Sea. And he was bragging on television that it's a strategy that's working, particularly in the area of Scarborough or Panatag. And the way he explained it was this. There are three layers, three naval layers that ring Panatag. The outer layer is composed of naval ships. The next layer is composed of maritime surveillance ships. And the inner ring is composed of fishing administration ships. And whenever our fishermen or local officials would like to enter Panatag, they'll have to ask permission from each layer. And within the center of Panatag are Chinese fishermen.
The center of the cabbage.
The center of the cabbage, and the general was saying that's how we protect our people, through the cabbage strategy. And they said it's working in Panatag, and we want to employ it in other parts of our area.
Okay, is that general also a loose cannon?
Well, he's describing a concentric circle type of
which is a naval strategy of some kind.
Fishermen. But just today, within the last 24 hours, they came out with another policy statement, and this is reorganizing their Coast Guard. Instead of surveillance ships from their Bureau of Fisheries, from the Maritime Surveillance, from their Coast Guard, they announced that they're consolidating all of this under one organization. That will make it very big, because during that time there were different instructions coming from different agencies. But now they also made the announcement that they're going to arm these Coast Guard ships. And we're talking of Coast Guard ships that will be patrolling not just in the South China Sea, but in the East China Sea, especially in the Senkaku Island group. And a lot of comments are to the effect that this is really very provocative, especially the mention of the use of light arms, not heavy arms like in the Navy, but still very provocative, because you don't normally associate Coast Guard ships with arms.
Right.
Now, Congressman Goles, former Secretary Alunan here made mention about the international community just a while ago. And two things about the international community: they're quick to take notice. We know that. We hear of a lot of the countries, especially our co-claimant countries, lending support or to us. But to take action, that's another thing altogether. Do you honestly feel that they will take action and fight this side by side with us, considering that China is the world's largest trading partner?
It's difficult to predict the moves and counter moves of various countries, just like what Tony mentioned. During the Second World War or before, there was an appeasement policy identified with Prime Minister Clemenceau of Great Britain. But now what we're seeing is a convergence of various countries that are interested in what's happening in the South China Sea and nearby, including the Indian Ocean and the East China Sea. You have Japan, for example, which has a running conflict with China in the Senkaku Island group. We have Vietnam. India is becoming interested because they're looking at Vietnam as a source of oil. In fact, they're talking about joint venture, although China is warning about this joint venture. The Indian Navy has already showed their flag in our area. In fact, they visited us. Australia has hosted an exercise involving about 20,000 U.S. troops. And we're talking here of an emerging alliance. A diamond alliance has been announced with Japan, with Australia, with India, and with the United States. And we're talking of the so-called pivot to Asia, announced a year ago and repeatedly announced by various secretaries of state and secretaries of defense.
I gotta ask you.
And 60% of what used to be in the Mediterranean European area
are now
will be transferred
deployed
to
here.
Asia. Not yet, but on its way.
I got to ask both of you gentlemen very quickly because we're running out of time. But of course, you remember there were some statements attributed to Defense Secretary Walter Gasmin, maybe even Foreign Affairs Secretary Alberto Rosario, that they were interested in giving the Americans more access to our own bases, maybe to position personnel and material for a longer period of time. Do you think that that might give us a deterrent to China's expansion into our area?
Let me answer.
Yeah.
First, I'm in favor of that. This is not permanent presence. This is access to our bases. But it should be access that should be allowed not only to the U.S., but also to Japan, to India, to Indonesia.
So you want to
to
open it up to
Australia.
even other armed forces?
Well, if they're passing by, why not?
Okay.
Yeah. In the same way that our ship would call on San Diego, on Honolulu, and be allowed without any demonstrations from the people there. This is a very normal exercise of a sovereign country, giving access to allies. This is very normal.
But it's supposed to be just a
Great
bilateral
Britain,
arrangement. I mean, we were just talking about the Philippines and the U.S., but you want to open it up to other countries.
Great Britain has been doing that with respect to other powers in the area, even during the time of Napoleon.
Okay, that's Secretary Luna.
Yes, I agree with Roy. I think we should open up our bases, our facilities,
Okay.
for pay-as-you-go arrangements with our allies, not just the United States. I'll tell
But
you.
as a deterrent, because I'm asking, would it be a deterrent to Chinese expansion?
Well, I don't think we should talk about deterrence. I think we should talk about military cooperation, not necessarily aimed at China. I remember at the end of the basis talks, or just before the end, we were saying, once the Americans leave, let's open up our facilities to other navies, to other countries who may want to use these facilities on a pay-as-you-go arrangement.
Okay.
Right? That way we kill two birds with one stone. One, we perk up the economy. At the same time, we firm up our military cooperation arrangements with other countries aside from the United
Who
States.
will not come to our aid if we're actually in conflict with China?
If we don't know that.
We
don't
don't
know
know
We don't know that. Nobody
Exactly.
can predict that.
We don't know that.
But those who are shaking their head
Yeah.
as far as this proposition is concerned should also shake their head with respect to the presence of the Chinese within our exclusive economic zone on a permanent basis, developing their own base. And
the Sancho Prefecture.
I would like to believe they're planning the same thing in the Panatag Shoal. Why are they not complaining about this? They're twisting and turning with respect to this proposition, but they're very quiet when it comes to China.
Why do you think so?
I think so. They're very
Why?
quiet. Nobody's complaining about it as far as the left is concerned.
Well, as far as the left is concerned, all right.
They seem to be very happy with
I
it.
think you just diverted this whole discussion to
No,
another
that's the same.
path here.
It's the same issue.
No, I do not
This is
think
even
so.
worse. Imagine permanent presence converting our shoal, our reef, into a military base.
Yeah, and opening
Against
our
our will.
shores to greater access, making the whole
Complain about
archipelago,
China first.
making the whole archipelago virtually an
no,
entire
they're not.
base.
I don't
the
think
United
it's that
States.
way.
Now the West Philippine Sea Coalition planning more activities in the coming months. What is ahead for the coalition?
Well, that's something that we'll be talking about. But in the past few days, we were saying we should be using more and more mass and social media to encourage more Filipinos to take leadership wherever they are, and to stand up to be counted and protest China's coercive actions.
But you do know
towards the
that
Philippines.
in social media sometimes these issues tend to get glossed over because they're not.
Sure.
I mean they tend not to be gut issues because it's just too high for people to even connect to.
No, but it's the eyes of the eyes and the ears of those monitoring it. That's our target, and apparently they're very bothered by it, by
like you
what's
said.
happening.
I think
The
the
advantage
shirt.
the advantage that we have in the Philippines is that we have access to social media. The other
The other
country,
side has blocked it.
The Chinese don't have,
Except
they
for
don't have
Weibo.
access. Of
Yeah, I
course, they
think-
can hack us.
We're gonna have to
They
wrap
can,
this up,
they
gentlemen.
can
But
do
I think,
cyber war.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to wrap this up. But I
We
think
have
the
10 million
T-shirts.
Filipinos who can do this abroad.
Excuse me, Congressman. I think the T-shirts that they wore this
The T-shirts,
afternoon
yeah.
really spelled it all. It's di ka pasisiil, and no matter what force, di tayo pasisiil.
Oh yeah, of course.
Let's show that again. Let's see those T-shirts again. Maybe we can roll the video and see the T-shirts from the report.
Well, if we can find the shirt, let's try to look for the shirts.
Maybe
that
not
they
a lot
wore
of
this
people.
afternoon.
Roy was using it.
You were using one? I don't know if they actually.
There you go.
Yeah, there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's, by the way, in our national anthem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil.
Well, when the Chinese, of course, begin to develop more aircraft carriers, because now they have one which they brought, secondhand from Russia. I don't know exactly what else we can do when they start deploying those aircraft
Well,
carriers.
let me just remind you that
Huh?
America had all the weapons in their arsenal, and yet Vietnam won the war.
All right. Well, let's leave it at that. Obviously, we
I
don't
don't
want
think
to.
he really liked what you just said.
Vietnam is with us now. They were with us
I
today.
knew you were gonna
Yeah,
say
they were
that.
with us
I
today.
knew you were gonna
Yeah.
say that.
Obviously,
yeah.
No.
we don't want to rattle any swords. We're not looking for war. We're trying to settle this peacefully, as you said, and diplomatically. So, in the meantime, we'd like to thank former DILG Secretary Rafi Aluran and, of course, Congressman Roy Lagoles. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming over.
Pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, UAAP stars are still on a high after their encounter with LeBron James.
And also when we come back, find out why Malacanang isn't too pleased with a Flying Dutchman. Primetime on ANC continues after the break. Stay with us, please.